Artificial intelligence is redefining industries and reshaping economies worldwide, and Africa is no exception. In 2024, Nigeria emerged as a key player, ranking second among African countries with the most AI firms, as the continent leverages AI across sectors like banking, agriculture, and healthcare. Questions arise about its transformative potential, investment sustainability, and long-term impact. From Nigeria's emergence as a tech hub to the global race in generative AI, this dialogue will unpack the promise, pitfalls, and prospects of artificial intelligence in Africa and beyond. Let's dive into the conversation with Professor Iwa Salami, Director, Center for Fintech, University of East London. Thank you, Professor Salami, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Nigeria ranks second among African countries with the most AI firms. What factors have sort of contributed to this rapid growth? And is there really anything to celebrate beyond the numbers?
Okay, well, yes, Nigeria indeed is becoming the leader, well, I'd say in Africa, really, for facilitating AI adoption. And fundamentally, I think the reason for this is that the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, and of course the National Innovation and Technology Development Agency are kind of spearheading the adoption and the effort here to integrate AI in various sectors. So there has been an increased effort to actually, get if you like, the benefits of AI across various sectors. And as you said earlier in your introduction, in sectors such as healthcare, agriculture, and financial services, and also beyond that. So yeah, there has been that extra effort in facilitating the adoption of AI from the regulatory authorities and from really the government, I'd say.
Well, that's interesting. Looking at the sectors you've mentioned, how do you see Nigeria's AI ecosystem sort of transforming those industries, whether you're talking banking, education, or even agriculture over the next 5 years?
Okay, so, I mean, if we take agriculture, for example, so we're seeing that AI is able actually to enhance agricultural productivity through things like, predictive analytics, which is obviously woven into AI in itself. And obviously this then would facilitate things like precision farming and pest detection. And of course, we know that this would inevitably help farmers make informed decisions and also help them increase yields and really, onward sort of for sustainability. So in agriculture, we're seeing the benefits of actually adopting AI, particularly, to help farmers, in this space. In the case of healthcare, we're seeing that AI-powered diagnostics and again, using predictive analytics are helping to improve patients' outcomes and also helping to streamline medical processes. So again, here we're seeing AI, the adoption of AI in healthcare holding huge and significant promises. In financial services, the potential is also enormous, as we're seeing across the world, and particularly in the case of Nigeria, there's a potential here that AI, its adoption can be useful in fraud detection in financial services, can also be useful in things like personalized banking, investment strategies, and also generally enhancing the efficiency and security of financial services. But I have to say that, these can only be made possible if we have the right infrastructure. And if we have limited infrastructure, such as, for example, internet connectivity, that can be problematic. So there would need to be the sustenance, if you like, of having robust, I'd say, technical infrastructure in place to actually see AI successful adoption in these sectors, as I've mentioned. So we also know that there needs to be a skills development program, because we know that there's a skills gap in this space, and there will therefore be a need for more skilled professionals in AI, and also obviously the related fields that would go with it. So there needs to be an effort here along those lines for us to be able to see the full benefits of AI. And then, of course, we need to get the regulatory provisions right, but I'd let you carry on with your questions.
All right, that's interesting. I like what you said about the regulatory provisions because we will definitely come to that. But before then, are there uncharted territories, in Nigeria that you feel maybe sectors, or sectors where we already have AI, but you think there can't be more? I mean, I'd like you to speak to that.
Yes, so as I said, in the case of agriculture, there's one or two, in the case of agriculture and also in particularly healthcare. But what we're seeing is that this is not a common thread across various sectors. So in the case of the healthcare sector, for example, we're seeing the adoption of AI in far more obviously prestigious hospitals and hospitals that can afford adopting the technology and using it. It's not pervasive, but we have the importance of actually getting the infrastructure right across the board, not just in fragmented or selected. I would say maybe like in the case of health, maybe selected private care providers. So we're seeing signs of the adoption, but I think in order to have a widespread adoption or successful adoption of AI, this is something that has to continue to be driven by the regulatory authorities or the authorities of the commissions that have been placed in charge, such as, for example, the National Innovation Technology Development Agency, and as I said earlier, of course, under the authority of the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation, and Digital Economy. So there's still quite a lot to be done, in seeing this grow, and particularly, as I said earlier, along the lines of the building of the necessary infrastructure for this. So internet connectivity being a big player here, would be quite key. And then, of course, like the skills required to actually be able to implement and to actually use and build these AI systems.
Well, AI, of course, loved and has some of the things it does that a lot of us love. But then it's not without some concerns, whether it is data privacy or the potential for job losses. Is this something you think people should be concerned about? I'll come to the part where you talked about affordability, but let's look at this first.
Yes, so there is the worry that because, of course, AI are kind of systems that are built to simulate human intelligence, simulate the way human beings respond, make decisions, and there's a huge potential and worry across the world, and of course, which would be the case for Nigeria and indeed any African economy, that once we begin to institute, these AI systems, certain jobs would go. So jobs that would have required humans to make decisions, would be taken over. And that has been a huge fear. Obviously, the rationale around AI is to make services more efficient, more productive. And I think with respect to the fear and worries around jobs, there would be the need, there would still be huge opportunities. It's just that now people would need to, skill up and learn new skills. So there'll be job losses, yes, through AI, but there would also be huge
talking about job losses, is it sector specific, or are they sector specific? Are there certain sectors where people need to skill up or begin to do some other things so they do not lose their jobs?
Yeah, and that's a very, very good question. So really, in any job that requires that information and decision making can be done through feeding huge amounts of data into a system, such as, for example, I'll speak particularly around in the area of banking and finance, for example, where in particularly compliance with things like the check for money laundering and the like. So the institution of anti-money laundering provisions and also sort of checking for if there have been suspicious activities in banking transactions specific, I would say now, to financial institutions. In those types of areas where you need, where previously we relied on humans to actually sift through copious amounts of data to actually check for certain types of patterns that may have worries or suspicious activities. In those sort of instances, we can have the adoption of AI going through those sorts of checking those sorts of systems very easily, but just by adopting AI, in which case the staff in banks who would have been responsible for doing that really would be redundant. So that's one typical example. And really in any industry where you have the checking of data and information, and you have to employ huge amounts of people to check data and the information and sift through documentation and paper, which really cuts across quite a number of sectors, whether we're looking at, whether we're looking at even government departments and in the way government departments work. If the adoption of AI will make things much more efficient, much more productive, but then it would mean that people would have to upskill in those sectors that are affected. So in a way, we're looking at a situation where, yes, certain jobs would go in certain industries, particularly, as I said, those that require a lot of humans sifting through huge amounts of documentation data. The adoption of AI would certainly make it easier and more efficient to look through those types of data. So sectors that are reliant on those types of staff to work in those types of areas would definitely see AI taking over jobs. But as I say, there'll be huge other opportunities. It would just mean that people would need to upskill in different ways. And of course, there'd still be, because we have the issues around some worries around AI. So in terms of things like bias, and transparency around how the data that's fed into AI systems, where they're sourced from, and the issues around potential bias in the decisions that are made from the data that has been entered into the system. Because we have issues like that, and because we also have issues around the violation of human rights that can potentially exist, again, from the way the data has been sourced, the way machines have been trained and trained to make decisions, because we have huge opportunities for the infringement of human rights and also bias and discrimination. There's a need to actually have human oversight over how
Absolutely.
A lot of the
I was
systems
coming
work.
there. I was going to say I'm not going to put my 100% trust in AI because of these things that you have mentioned. I mean, I've seen AI make mistake, whether you enter the wrong data or something somewhere. I just feel there's a human being somewhere that needs to check just to be sure that we're on point and, to sort of ensure that those things you mentioned are not there. Well, while AI is surely promising, there is another thing. It's sort of one of the things that experts have said is that it is not generating much revenue relative to the cost. Now, are we going to see investor apathy as a result of this? I'm going somewhere. According to Arvind Narayanan, that's a Princeton University computer science professor, he said, and I'll just quote him verbatim, technology adoption requires changes to people's workflows and sometimes organizational structures and legal guardrails. These changes do not happen at the speed of technical innovation. So we should expect that it will take a decade or two for businesses to fully reap the benefits of today's generative AI. End of quote. These are his thoughts. What do you make of this, and what are your own thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, any system that's going to be brought on board that would require drastic changes in any sector would definitely require time and would require, obviously, workers to be trained and industries to get used to adopting those types of infrastructure. So you're right in saying, particularly in Africa, in the African context, you're right in saying, yes, we have a lot of talk around sort of AI doing this and doing that, and a lot of potential investments going in, but not totally getting the benefits of it as yet. Now, this would require a lot of efforts for various sectors, a lot of efforts to obviously, train staff, require a lot of appreciation of the benefits long term for those industries. And once that can be done, then of course these industries would see the necessity, would begin to reap the benefits of the adoption of AI. I think it's so important that technology is allowed to where we're in a position where we allow the innovation to thrive rather than I'd say rather than sort of kill it through regulation because of the fears, as I have outlined and you have alluded to as well. But to allow regulation to be balanced in a way that, these innovations are given the opportunity to actually thrive. But obviously, with proper guardrails of regulation, so things around sort of accountability. I mean, who would be liable when things go wrong? The regulation needs to be able to let us know where liability would lie. So we need clarity. The regulatory framework would need to be robust enough to make us know, for example, how data fed into these systems are sourced, stored, used, for data protection and security, whose data is being used here.
There's a lot to talk about, Professor Salami.
We have
I guess we just have to leave it here. Thank you so much, Professor Iwa Salami, Director, Center for Fintech, University of East London, for your time and, of course, your thoughts on the show today.
Thank you for having me.